Good morning and welcome to Bridging Divides Part 2. I'm speaking today on Treaty 7 territory, the traditional lands of the Kainai, Siksika, Piikani, Nakota, and Tsuut'ina nations, which is south of Treaty 6 territory where Congress is being virtually organized this year. I invite anyone to acknowledge the land upon which they're residing today in the chat if they wish, and today's panel promises to continue these reflections and discussion. I'm privileged to know today's speakers as well as to introduce them and hear their most recent work. Our first speaker today is Dr. Mathew Martini. He's a full professor in the Department of English Language and Literature and director of a PhD in Interdisciplinary Humanities at Brock University, St. Catharines, Ontario. He's the author of 2 monographs, Between Theatre and Philosophy and Tragedy and Trauma in the Plays of Christopher Marlowe. He has produced 7 scholarly editions of English Renaissance plays. Edward II, The Jew of Malta, The Bee Text of Dr. Faustus, Tamburlaine the Greats Part 1 and 2 have all been published through Broadwood-View Press. The Famous Victories of Henry V has been published through Queen's Men's Editions. David and Bathsheba and The Massacre of Paris most recently through Revels. And he has just completed an edition of Robert Greene's Selimus for Broadview Press, is writing a book entitled Psychoanalysis and Literary Theory for Routledge, and soon will be working on a monograph on nonviolence in English Renaissance drama.
Hello, everyone. The title of my paper today is Atheism and the Maternal in Christopher Marlowe's Tamburlaine Plays and Robert Greene's Selimus. In Tamburlaine's Weak Sons, Peter Barrick dismisses Selimus as one of Tamburlaine's weak sons, implicitly connecting Greene's play to Tamburlaine's effeminate brat Caliphus, whom Tamburlaine executes in 2nd Tamburlaine, Act 4, Scene 1, for refusing to fight in battle. Earlier in 2nd Tamburlaine, Tamburlaine views his 3 sons critically and concludes that they resemble their mother's Zenocrate far too much. Methinks their looks are amorous, not martial as the sons of Tamburlaine. Tamburlaine is hysterically anxious to efface this resemblance, and when Caliphus proves to be like his mother not only in physical appearance, but also in his criticism of the martial hypermasculinity that his father seeks to embody, Tamburlaine savagely imposes martial law, war's justice upon him. He imposes the law of the father in order to repress the maternal and re-establish an exclusively patrilineal order. By labeling Selimus as a weak son, I will argue, Barrick repeats Tamburlaine's gesture. A careful examination of Greene's play, however, demonstrates that Selimus is anything but a weak response to Marlowe's play. In Selimus, the repressed maternal returns triumphantly, precisely through its defiant atheism. Selimus, the Emperor Bajazeth's youngest son, justifies ripping the Turkish crown from his aging father on the grounds that Dame Nature does not recognize the foolish names of father, mother, brother, and such like. Therefore, parasites face the same eternal fate as sons who obey their fathers, and that's just nothing. Comparing Selimus to the vipers in Great Nero's fen who eat up the belly that first nourished them, Bajazeth attempts to subdue the maternal to the patrilineal symbolic order. Appropriating the maternal to his own masculine body, Bajazeth seeks to confine power exclusively to the realm of fathers and sons governed by the law of the father. Selimus's successful rebellion wildly liberates the displaced maternal from this subordination. Powerfully and ironically, then, Greene's effeminate brat forcefully dramatizes the weakness of its father's logocentric, if not theological, masculinity. Tamburlaine's execution of his son Caliphus has attracted ample critical attention, although not universal condemnation. If Alan Shepard has condemned the execution as only Tamburlaine's most striking attempt to establish a martial hypermasculinity by eliminating his effeminate pacifist son, then other critics, such as Carolyn Minshall, have condoned it as a telling instantiation of Tamburlaine's rigorous martial justice, much in accord with his slaughter of the virgins of Damascus in First Tamburlaine. What is at stake in this conflict of critical perspectives is, in psychoanalytic terms, the relation between the law of the father and the maternal that it must repress in order to establish itself. The slaughter of the virgins of Damascus sets the pattern, which begins with mercy and ends with massacre. The first day when he, Tamburlaine, pitches down his tents while besieging a city, a messenger tells the Sultan of Arabia, "White is their hue, and on his silver crest a snowy feather, spangled white he bears, to signify the mildness of his mind, that satiate with spoil refuseth blood. But when Aurora mounts the second time, as red as scarlet is his furniture. Then must his kindled wrath be quenched with blood, not sparing any that can manage arms. But if these threats move not submission, black are his colors, black pavilion, his spear, his shield, his horse, his armor, plumes, and jetty feathers menace death and hell. Without respect of sex, degree, or age, he razeth all his foes with fire and sword." Deaf to his citizens' pleas, the governor of Damascus resists until Tamburlaine's colors are black. He then recognizes that he has miscalculated and sends out the virgins, the embodiments of Damascus's sexual and maternal future, on whose safe return depends our city, liberty, and lives, in an attempt to mollify Tamburlaine. Tamburlaine's response is predictable, troping the virgin's subsequent impalement on his horsemen's lances as the inevitable and inexorable consequence of his maintenance of his martial law. What? Are the turtles frayed out of their nests? Alas, poor fools, must you be the first shall feel the sworn destruction of Damascus? They know my custom. Could they not as well have sent ye out when first my milk-white flags, through which sweet mercy threw her gentle beams, reflexing them on your disdainful eyes, as now, when fury and insensate hate flings slaughtering terror from my coal-black tent, and tells for truth, submission comes too late. As pitiable as they might be, and Tamburlaine is nothing if not a sensitive genocidal maniac, the virgins and the maternal they represent must be destroyed. They know my custom, which tells for truth submission comes too late. Tamburlaine's execution of Caliphas in Second Tamburlaine follows the pattern Tamburlaine sets with the virgins. Caliphas's refusal to join his brothers on the battlefield confirms the suspicions Tamburlaine voiced to their mother Xenocrate earlier in the play. His sons' looks are amorous, not martial as the sons of Tamburlaine. A suspicion Xenocrate herself reinforces in her reply that, "My gracious lord, they have their mother's looks." Associated with sex and the maternal, Tamburlaine's two other sons, Amyras and Celebinus, attempt to identify with their father through their hyperbolically violent language and martial activity. In contrast, Caliphas identifies with his mother. While my brothers follow arms, my lord, let me accompany my gracious mother. In Act 4, Scene 1, he refuses to be dragged by his brothers onto the battlefield, preferring instead to stay in his tent, play cards, and dream of who shall kiss the fairest of the Turks' concubines first when my father hath conquered them. This enrages Tamburlaine. How may my heart thus fired with mine eyes, wounded with shame and discontent, he declaims as he hauls Caliphas in front of his victorious army, shroud any thought may hold my striving hand from martial justice on thy wretched soul. Pity will not save Caliphas, just as it did not save the virgins of Damascus from the martial justice of his father. As he prepares to kill his effeminate brat, he angrily apostrophizes Jove. Here, Jove, receive his fainting soul again, a form not meet to give that subject essence, whose matter is the flesh of Tamburlaine. He then declares war on Jove for sending to my issue such a soul. Now shall ye feel the strength of Tamburlaine. Tamburlaine's words are doubly significant. First, they reveal that Tamburlaine's attempt to eliminate the effeminacy of his son is also an attempt to eliminate the maternal. Tamburlaine accords the Naucriti no share in Caliphas's flesh. Rather, his son's flesh is wholly his father's, and as father, he has the absolute right of life and death over it. It is entirely his own. Second, they indicate that Tamburlaine is not positioning himself as just a father, but as the father, as what Freud called the primal father of the primal horde. Tamburlaine claims not to be like Jove in his exercise of power, but to be greater than Jove, not to be following the law of the father, but to be its linchpin, its ontological foundation. Hence, at the end of Second Tamburlaine, after demonstrating his strength against both Jove and Muhammad, Tamburlaine veers between a mystical monotheism and atheism. He advises his soldiers that Muhammad remains in hell. He cannot hear the voice of Tamburlaine. Seek out another godhead to adore, the God that sits in heaven, if any God, for he is God alone and none but he. Selimus is much more resolutely atheist in its ideas than the Tamburlaine plays. But the atheism of Greene's play heralds not the further imposition of the law of the father, but rather the triumphal return of the repressed maternal. Written between 1588 and 1592, and first performed by the Queen's Men, Greene's play dramatizes the struggle among the three sons of Ottoman Emperor Bajazet II, Korkut, Achamat, and Selimus, to depose Bajazet as emperor. Historically, the events dramatized by the play take place between 1511 and 1513. Bajazet in no way possesses Tamburlainian stature. He is a lachrymose worried old man who would like nothing better than to be rid of the emperorship. Though on all the world we make extend from the South Pole unto the northern bears, and stretch our reign from east to western shore, he sighs in the play's opening scene, yet doubt and care are with us evermore. He knows not what it is to be a king that thinks a scepter a pleasant thing, he later adds, with just a hint of petulance. He has tried to be like his father, Mehmed II, the conqueror of the Golden Apples, Constantinople, and failed. The Christian armies, oftentimes defeated by my victorious father's valiance, have all my captains famously confronted, and cracked into our uncontrolled lance, he laments, in the middle of his litany of the military defeats and other setbacks that he has recently suffered. Indeed, he does not even live up to his forefather and namesake Bajazeth, one whose tragic fate at Tamburlaine's hands is at the center of First Tamburlaine. For fortune never showed herself so cross to any prince as to poor Bajazeth, that woeful emperor first of my name, whom the Tartarians locked in cage to be a spectacle to all the world, was 10 times happier than I am. For Tamburlaine, the scourge of nations, was he that pulled him from his kingdom. So, but mine own sons expel me from the throne. Where shall I begin to make my moan? Or what shall I first reckon in my plaints? Bajazeth, then, is emphatically not the primal father. He persistently fails in his identificatory efforts, and his sons, like the sons in Freud's myth of the primal horde, seek to take advantage of that failure. Yet even as he confronts his rebellious sons, he persists. Is this thy duty, son, unto thy father, so impiously to level at his life? He demands of Selimus as they face off across the battlefield at Colonial. Can thy soul, wallowing in ambitious mire, seek for to reave that breast with bloody knife from whence thou hadst thou being, Selimus? Thou, like to a crafty polypus, dost turn thy hungry jaws upon thyself. For what am I, Selimus, but thyself, he later adds. Like Tamburlaine in this one respect, Bajazeth seeks to establish the law of the father, the pious duty of a son to his father, through the complete repression of the maternal. It is from his breast, Bajazeth asserts, that Selimus had his beard. But Selimus is not Caliphas. If Bajazeth is a Tamburlainian weak father, then Selimus must be considered a Tamburlainian strong son. Art thou a father? Selimus scornfully replies. Nay, false Bajazeth, disclaim the title which thou dost not merit. Failed father though he may be, then, Bajazeth attempts to subdue the maternal to the patrilineal symbolic order. Appropriating the maternal to his own masculine body, Bajazeth seeks to confine power exclusively to the realm of fathers and sons, governed by the law of the father. Selimus's ultimately successful rebellion wildly liberates the displaced maternal from this subordination. All of Bajazeth's sons are to a greater or lesser degree linked to the effeminate and maternal. Korkut, the eldest, is a scholar, and as one of Bajazeth's advisors snidely remarks, he that never handled but his pen will be unskilful at the warlike lance. And indeed, Korkut does not pursue the emperorship through the warlike lance. Instead, having heard of Selimus's first failed rebellion, he requests that Bajazeth honor the promise he made to him when, as a child, he substituted for Bajazeth as emperor, while Bajazeth warred against Bajazeth's brother Zem, in their competition for their dead father's throne. Bajazeth then had promised Korkut the emperorship, and Korkut now asks Bajazeth to honor that promise when he dies. In quiet contradiction of the effeminacy connoted by his preference for the pen over the lance, then, he asks Bajazeth to uphold the patrilineal symbolic order. Achamat, Bajazeth's favorite, is more clearly linked to the feminine. He leads his life still in lascivious pomp and never saw his foeman's face, but always slept upon a foeman's lap. The Janissaries consider him as unfit as Korkut to be emperor. Achamat disagrees, and when Bajazeth turns down his request that Bajazeth abdicate in his favor, declares his intention to demonstrate that, quote, I can use my sword and like a lion seize upon my prey. He then mounts his own rebellion, relegating his effeminacy to the past as he adopts a hyperbolically martial persona that is explicitly modeled on Tamburlaine. Into these murky waters steps Selimus, Bajazeth's youngest son. The Janissaries favor Selimus. The rule and power over us is only fit for valiant Selimus, who, Bajazeth concedes, hath won my people's heart and is a friend to chivalry. Unlike his brothers, Selimus is a man, and in the face of Korkut's request and Achamat's rebellion, he is the man for the moment. In spite of his rebellion earlier in the play, he is asked by Bajazeth to take the head of his army of Janissaries and quell Achamat's rebellion, an opportunity that he parlays into forcing Bajazeth into abdicating and assuming the emperorship himself. In no way, however, does Selimus's success mitigate his ties to either the maternal or atheism. As the Machiavellian Guise does in Scene 2 of Marlowe's The Massacre at Paris, in Scene 2 of the play, Selimus expounds his position in a lengthy oration addressed to himself. Now, Selimus, consider who thou art. Identity and identification are Selimus's themes. He begins by considering the conventional implications of his identity as Bajazeth's son. Some man will say, I am too impious thus to lay siege against my father's life, and that I ought to follow virtuous and godly sons. He quickly ironizes this commonplace, however. Is he my father? Why, I am his son. I know more to him than he to me. If he proceed as he hath now begun, and pass from me the Turkish seigneury to Achamat, then Selimus is free, and if he injure me that am his son, faith, all the love twixt him and me is done. The irony then gives way to bald atheism, as Selimus seeks to defend his seemingly impious rejection of the ostensibly natural ties that bind father and son. Religion, he declares, was only found to make us peaceable. Hence in especial comes the foolish names of father, mother, brother, and such like. For whoso well his cogitation frames shall find they serve, but only for to strike into our minds a certain kind of love. For these names too are but a policy to keep the quiet of society. This rejection of the signifiers of patrilineal symbolic order culminates simultaneously in a hyperbolic rejection of the ontological linchpin of that order, God, and in an embrace of its maternal substitute, nature. Why should we seek to make that soul a slave to which Dame Nature so large freedom gave? Amongst us men there is some difference of actions, termed by us good or ill, as he that from his father recommends differs from him that doth his father kill. And yet I think others what they will, the parasites, when death hath given them rest, shall have as good a part as the rest. And that's just nothing. For as I suppose, in death's void kingdom reigns eternal night, secure of evil and secure of foes, where nothing doth the wicked man affright no more than him, than dies in doing right. Then since in death nothing shall to us fall, here while I live I'll have a snatch at all. That can never be attained unless old Bajazeth do die the death. Unlike Corcut's religious erudition, Selimus's philosophical atheism leads to action. Unlike Akamat's later unmasking as he changes the livery of Venus for that of Mars, Selimus's unmasking embraces the feminine and the maternal. His violence is anchored in Dame Nature's freedom from the patrilineal symbolic order. Although more Tamburlainian than either of his two brothers, the strong Selimus is emphatically a mama's boy, and his success returns the repressed maternal in triumph over a world of metaphysically hollow patriarchal law upheld by materially weak fathers. Thank you.